I'm standing in my father's office, watching him sign papers that will change both our lives forever. His hands shake slightly as he scrawls his signature across the deed transfer. The factory that's been in our family for 30 years, the one he swore I'd never be worthy of, is now mine. You happy now, Sarah? He asks without looking up, his voice hollow. You destroyed everything I built. I lean back in the leather chair that used to intimidate me as a child. I didn't destroy anything, Dad. I just refused to let you destroy me. 6 months ago, I was the disappointment, the ungrateful daughter who threw away her legacy, the fool who thought she could make it on her own after he cut me off without a penny. He told everyone I'd come crawling back within weeks, begging for forgiveness and my old position in his company. Instead, I built something better, something that made his empire look like what it really was: outdated, inefficient, and built on fear rather than innovation. Now his biggest clients are mine. His suppliers choose my company over his. And today, the bank called in his loans. The irony is, I say, standing to leave, I actually wanted to work with you back then. All you had to do was treat me like an equal instead of property. He finally looks up, and for the first time in my life, I see something in his eyes I never expected: respect. But it's too late for that now. Let me take you back to how this all began. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'm 31 years old. For most of my life, I was the dutiful daughter of David Chen, owner of Chen Manufacturing, a mid-sized factory that produces automotive parts for major car companies. Growing up, I thought our family had it all figured out. Our house in the suburbs of Detroit was the biggest on the block. Dad drove a different luxury car every year, and Mom never had to work. I went to private school, took piano lessons, and spent summers at expensive camps. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. But inside our house, everything revolved around the factory. Dad worked 16-hour days, came home exhausted and irritable, and talked about nothing but production numbers, supply chain issues, and which employees were pulling their weight. Mom played the perfect wife, hosting dinner parties for his business partners and never questioning his decisions. And me, I was groomed from age 10 to eventually take over the family business. This will all be yours someday, princess, Dad would say, ruffling my hair as he explained profit margins and manufacturing processes. The Chen legacy continues through you. I actually loved those early years learning about the business. Dad would take me to the factory on weekends, and I'd watch in fascination as raw materials transformed into precision parts. I asked endless questions about everything: why they used this supplier over that one, how they could improve efficiency, what new technologies might change the industry. By high school, I was spending every summer working on the factory floor, not in some cushy office job, but actually learning the production process from the ground up. I worked alongside employees who'd been there for decades, learning their names, their stories, their frustrations with management. That hit him like I'd never seen before. For a moment, the powerful, intimidating man who dominated my childhood looked genuinely vulnerable. I never wanted to lose you, he said quietly. Then you shouldn't have made me choose between being your daughter and being myself. He left without another word, but something had shifted between us. The conversation felt like an ending, but also like a beginning. Phoenix Manufacturing's success happened faster than any of us expected. Our Ford contract was delivered 2 days early, with quality ratings that exceeded their specifications. Jennifer Walsh was so impressed that she immediately offered us 3 additional projects. But the real breakthrough came when James Morrison's delivery truck startup got featured in automotive news. The article specifically mentioned their manufacturing partner, Phoenix Manufacturing, as a key factor in their ability to rapidly iterate designs and beat larger competitors to market. Within 2 weeks of that article, we had inquiries from 15 different companies. All of them had the same story. They were innovative startups or specialty manufacturers who couldn't get established suppliers to take them seriously. Elena, we're going to need more space, I told my partner as we reviewed the latest batch of contract proposals. And more people, Tom added. I can't run this equipment 18 hours a day indefinitely. That's when the first of Dad's employees started reaching out. Kevin Park from engineering called first. Sarah, I heard Phoenix is hiring. Any chance you'd consider someone who's stuck at Chen Manufacturing? What's the situation over there? Kevin hesitated. Your dad's been different since you left, more controlling, more paranoid. He's convinced that you're going to steal all his clients, so he's micromanaging everything. 3 people have quit in the past month. What about loyalty to my father? He doesn't inspire loyalty anymore, he demands it. There's a difference. Within 6 weeks, 5 Chen manufacturing employees had joined Phoenix, all experienced workers who were frustrated with Dad's increasingly authoritarian management style. The defections apparently sent Dad into a panic. He started calling our clients directly, warning them that Phoenix was unstable and inexperienced. Jennifer Walsh called to let me know about his interference. Your father contacted our procurement department yesterday. He claimed Phoenix was using stolen Chen, manufacturing intellectual property, and suggested Ford could face legal issues by working with you. My stomach dropped. What did you tell them? I told them that David Chen sounded like a man who was scared of competition. And I reminded them that all our Phoenix contracts involve completely different products than what Chen Manufacturing produces. She paused. Sarah, his behavior is actually helping your reputation. Nobody likes supplier politics, and he's making himself look desperate. But Dad's most self-destructive moment came when he tried to sabotage our relationship with our equipment supplier. Tom came into my office looking shaken. Sarah, we might have a problem. Morrison Industrial called this morning. They're demanding immediate payment for all our equipment purchases. But we have payment terms through next quarter. Your father called Morrison's president personally, told him Phoenix was likely to go bankrupt, and suggested they should collect payment immediately to protect themselves. I felt rage build in my chest, but also something else, clarity. Tom, get Morrison's president on the phone. I'm driving over there now. Morrison Industrial was a family business run by Bill Morrison, who'd supplied equipment to automotive manufacturers for 20 years. His office was cluttered with machine catalogs and photos of equipment installations. Ms. Chen, I have to say, your father's call concerned me. He's been a customer for 15 years, and when someone with his experience warns me about credit risks. Mr. Morrison, can I show you something? I pulled out my phone and displayed our bank balance, our contract portfolio, and our payment history. Phoenix has never missed a payment. We've actually paid early on 2 invoices. Our contracts are with Fortune 500 companies. What specific credit risk are you concerned about? Bill studied the financial information, frowning. This all looks solid. Now let me ask you something. If my father was confident in his company's competitive position, would he be calling suppliers to sabotage a startup that supposedly poses no threat to him? Bill's expression changed as the implications sank in. He's scared, I continued, and scared companies make desperate decisions. Phoenix pays our bills early and treats our suppliers as partners. Which kind of customer relationship would you prefer? Not only did Bill restore our original payment terms, he offered Phoenix preferred customer status and first access to new equipment arrivals. Your father might have more history with us, he said, but you have better business practices. That conversation taught me something crucial. Dad's reputation in the industry was built on intimidation and old boy networks, not actual excellence. When people examined the facts objectively, Phoenix's approach was clearly superior. The irony became even more apparent when Chen Manufacturing started losing contracts they'd held for years. Marcus Rodriguez called me 6 months after Phoenix opened, sounding desperate. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and please be honest. Are you actively targeting Chen's clients? Why would I do that? Because we just lost the Henderson account, and they specifically said they were switching to a supplier that could offer more flexibility and innovation. Henderson Automotive wasn't even our client, but when I researched their needs, I realized they were exactly the type of company Dad's operation couldn't serve effectively. Marcus Henderson makes custom racing components. They need small batches, rapid turnaround, and constant design modifications. Does that sound like Chen Manufacturing's strength? No, but we've supplied them for 8 years. And how often did they complain about lead times? How many orders did you have to turn down because the quantities were too small or the specifications too complex? Marcus was quiet, more than I want to admit. Then, they didn't leave Chen manufacturing for Phoenix. They left Chen manufacturing for someone who could actually meet their needs. But the real poetic justice came when Dad tried to bid on a contract with Tesla's New Michigan facility. I learned about it through Alina, who still had friends at Chen Manufacturing. Your dad's been working on this Tesla proposal for 3 months. It's huge, potentially their biggest contract ever. Tesla was looking for a manufacturing partner who could produce battery housing components with extremely tight tolerances and rapid delivery schedules. The contract was worth $15 million over 3 years. I knew Dad would bid on it because the dollar amount was too big to ignore. I also knew he'd struggle with the technical requirements because Tesla's specifications demanded exactly the kind of flexible, innovative approach he'd always resisted. Phoenix wasn't large enough to bid on the full contract, but we were perfectly positioned to become a subcontractor for whoever won it. When Tesla announced their decision, neither Phoenix nor Chen Manufacturing got the primary contract. It went to a larger supplier from Ohio. But 3 days later, that supplier called Phoenix. We won the Tesla contract, their project manager explained, but we need a partner who can handle the rapid prototyping and small batch production for their design validation phase. Your name came up as the most capable, flexible manufacturer in the Detroit area. The subcontract was worth $2.3 million, more than Phoenix had earned in our entire first year. How did our name come up? I asked. Tesla's engineering team specifically recommended you, said they'd heard Phoenix could deliver precision work on tight timelines. Later, I learned that Dad had spent 6 figures preparing his bid for the Tesla contract, including hiring external consultants and upgrading equipment specifically for the proposal. We got paid for work he'd invested in winning, simply because we had the reputation for being able to deliver what clients actually needed. Tell me in the comments, do you think this is fair revenge or is Sarah being too harsh? The final piece of poetic justice came from an unexpected source, Mom. She showed up at Phoenix unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon, looking around our bustling facility with an expression I'd never seen before. It might have been pride. Your father doesn't know I'm here, she said when I walked over to greet her. How are you, Mom? I'm confused. For months, your father's been telling me you were destroying yourself out of stubbornness, but this place looks successful. It is successful. She watched Alina directing a team of workers, Tom consulting with a client over technical specifications, and our newest hire, a young engineer we'd recruited from a struggling competitor, programming one of our CNC machines. These people seem happy to be here, Mom observed. We treat them like partners, not employees. Everyone has input on improving our processes. That's not how your father runs things. As I know. Mom was quiet for several minutes, just observing our operation. Finally, she turned back to me. I owe you an apology, Sarah. I thought you were being selfish and ungrateful. I didn't understand that you were trying to build something better. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I chose to support your father because it was easier than admitting he might be wrong, but watching what you've accomplished, I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. That conversation meant more to me than any business success, but it also revealed the final crack in Dad's foundation. Even Mom was starting to question whether his way was the only way. The ultimate irony came when Dad's biggest client started having production problems. Chen Manufacturing had been supplying General Motors with transmission components for 12 years, but GM's new electric vehicle line required different specifications and tighter tolerances. Instead of adapting, Dad tried to convince GM to modify their requirements to match his existing capabilities. When that failed, he bid on the contract anyway, promising delivery standards he couldn't actually meet. The first shipment was rejected for quality issues. The second was 3 weeks late. By the third failure, GM was actively looking for alternative suppliers. That's when Jennifer Walsh recommended Phoenix to GM's procurement team. "You've consistently delivered complex work on impossible timelines," she told their director. "If anyone can salvage this project, it's Phoenix." Dad had spent 12 years building that GM relationship. We inherited it in 12 minutes, simply by proving we could deliver what they needed. The call came on a Thursday morning, 8 months after I'd walked out of Dad's office. It was our attorney, Patricia Wung, and her voice was carefully neutral. "Sarah, I have some news about Chen Manufacturing. Your father's company has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection." I sat down heavily in my office chair. Despite everything, hearing that Dad's company was failing hit me harder than expected. "What happened?" "Combination of factors: lost contracts, equipment financing issues, and what appears to be significant cash flow problems. The bank is calling in their loans, and David Chen is looking for a buyer for the company assets." I stared out the window of Phoenix Manufacturing's new 25,000 square foot facility. In 8 months, we'd grown from 4 people to 37 employees. Our revenue for the current quarter was projected to exceed what Chen Manufacturing earned in their best year ever. But I felt no satisfaction in Dad's failure, just sadness for what we could have built together if he'd trusted me. "Patricia, I want to make an offer on Chen's assets." "Sarah, are you sure this could be seen as?" "As what? Smart business. Dad always said business wasn't personal." The bidding process was surreal. I was competing against 3 other companies to purchase the factory where I'd learned everything about manufacturing. The building where Dad had promised me a future before taking it away. Our bid wasn't the highest, but it was the only one that included provisions for retaining Chen Manufacturing's employees and honoring their existing benefit plans. When the bankruptcy court announced Phoenix Manufacturing as the winning bidder, I called Dad directly. "The sale is final," I told him, "but I want you to know everyone who wants to stay has a job at Phoenix, including you." There was a long silence. "As what?" "As a senior advisor. You have 30 years of experience and industry relationships that would be valuable to our operation. You'd report to me, but you'd have input on major decisions." "You're offering me a job at my own company." "I'm offering you a job at Phoenix Manufacturing. Chen Manufacturing doesn't exist anymore." Another silence. "Why?" "Because despite everything, you taught me how to build a successful business. The difference is, I learned how to do it without destroying relationships or crushing people's dreams." "And you think I'll accept charity from my daughter?" "I think you'll accept an opportunity to be part of something bigger than your ego." Dad didn't give me an answer that day. But 3 weeks later, he showed up at Phoenix wearing a visitor's badge and asking Alina for a tour of our production floor. I watched from my office as he examined our equipment, talked to our workers, and reviewed our quality control processes. His body language was different, less authoritative, more curious. Alina brought him to my office afterward. "Your operation is impressive," he admitted, not quite meeting my eyes. "Efficient, well-organized." Thank you. I've been thinking about your offer." I waited. "I have conditions." I almost laughed. Even in defeat, Dad wanted to negotiate from a position of strength. "I'm listening." "I want to understand your business model. If I'm going to be part of this, I need to know how you plan to stay profitable long-term." "Fair enough. Alina, can you pull up our 5-year projection?" For the next 2 hours, I walked Dad through Phoenix's strategy. How we identified underserved market segments. How our employee partnership model reduced turnover and increased innovation. How our lean manufacturing approach allowed us to be both faster and less expensive than traditional suppliers. "You've built something I couldn't," he said finally. "Not because I lack the technical knowledge, but because I lack the vision to see beyond what already exists. Dad, you built an excellent traditional manufacturing company. I just built a different kind of company for a different market." "No," he said firmly. "You built a better company, and you did it by learning from my mistakes instead of repeating them." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, Then Dad asked, what would my role actually be? Business development and client relations. You know this industry better than anyone. Help us identify opportunities and build relationships, but the operational decisions belong to our team, including decisions you disagree with. Especially decisions I disagree with, that's how innovation happens. Dad was quiet for another long moment. I was wrong about you, Sarah. I thought strength meant never showing vulnerability. You've shown me that real strength is building something that doesn't require you to diminish other people. Does that mean you'll take the position? It means I'll try to earn it. 6 months later, Dad had become one of Phoenix's most valuable team members. His industry connections opened doors we couldn't have reached alone, and his experience helped us avoid costly mistakes. More importantly, working together as equals rather than parent and child had rebuilt our relationship in ways I'd never imagined possible. Mom started visiting the factory regularly, not to play hostess for business dinners, but because she was genuinely interested in what we were building. She even suggested improvements to our customer service processes that increased client satisfaction scores across the board. I spent 30 years supporting your father's business without understanding it, she told me during one visit. Here, I feel like I can actually contribute something. The most satisfying moment came during our 1-year anniversary celebration. The entire Phoenix team gathered in our main production area, which was now running 3 shifts to keep up with demand. Alina gave a speech about how Phoenix had proven that companies could be both profitable and humane. Tom talked about the joy of working with cutting-edge equipment instead of maintaining obsolete machinery. Our newest employees shared stories about feeling valued and heard in ways they'd never experienced at larger companies. But the comment that meant the most came from Rosa, who'd finally left her position at another company to join Phoenix full-time. Last year, Sarah asked us to bet on ourselves, she said to the crowd. We thought we were helping her start a business. Turns out, she was helping us discover what we were capable of achieving. Dad was standing in the back of the room during these speeches, and I saw him wipe his eyes when he thought no one was looking. After everyone else left, he approached me with an envelope. What's this? A letter I wrote 6 months ago but never gave you. I want you to read it now. I opened the envelope and found a handwritten note. Sarah, I was wrong about everything. Wrong about what you needed from me, wrong about what the business needed, and wrong about what strength looks like. You didn't just build a better company. You became a better leader than I ever was. I'm proud to be your employee, but I'm prouder to be your father. Dad. You wrote this 6 months ago. I wrote it the day I realized you'd succeeded not in spite of my rejection, but because of your own character. I kept it as a reminder that the best thing I ever did for your career was get out of your way. Looking around our thriving facility, surrounded by people who chose to be here because we'd created something worth being part of, I finally understood what Dad meant. He'd tried to give me his legacy. Instead, I'd built my own. Rate this story 0 to 10 and tell me, do you think Sarah and her father's relationship can really be repaired after everything that happened? The real victory wasn't proving Dad wrong. It was proving that success doesn't require destroying other people to achieve it. Phoenix Manufacturing succeeded because we lifted people up instead of cutting them down. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well enough that your enemies realize they want to be on your side after all. But the story doesn't end there. 2 years after acquiring Dad's assets, Phoenix Manufacturing had become the fastest-growing specialty manufacturer in the Midwest. We'd expanded into 3 facilities, employed over 150 people, and our client list included Tesla, Ford, GM, and dozens of innovative startups that were reshaping the automotive industry. The industry magazines that had once ignored me now featured Phoenix on their covers. The future of flexible manufacturing read one headline, with a photo of me standing next to our newest automated production line. But the moment that truly showed how far we'd come happened during a trade show in Detroit. I was walking through the exhibits when I overheard a conversation between 2 executives from a major automotive supplier. You see that woman over there? One was saying, pointing in my direction. That's Sarah Chen from Phoenix Manufacturing. Word is, she's revolutionizing how specialty parts get made. Chen, any relation to David Chen from the old Chen Manufacturing? That's her father. Story goes, he tried to keep her in a minor role, so she left and built a better company from scratch. Now she's the one everyone wants to work with. They didn't know I could hear them, but their conversation made me realize something profound. My identity in this industry was no longer defined by being David Chen's daughter. I was Sarah Chen, CEO of Phoenix Manufacturing, a company known for innovation, employee satisfaction, and client success. The final validation came when Harvard Business School contacted me about teaching a case study on Phoenix Manufacturing in their entrepreneurship program. Your company exemplifies how traditional industries can be disrupted by better operational practices rather than just new technology, the professor explained during our call. We'd like you to guest lecture about building competitive advantages through organizational culture. Me, teaching at Harvard about business strategy. Dad was sitting in my office when I hung up from that call, reviewing supplier proposals for our newest facility expansion. Harvard Business School, he said, having overheard the conversation, teaching the next generation of business leaders. It's just one lecture. Sarah, when I was your age, the biggest thing I'd accomplished was convincing a bank to give me a loan. You're being asked to share your expertise with future CEOs. He set down the supplier files and looked at me directly. I spent so many years trying to teach you how to think like me that I never bothered to learn how you actually think. That was my loss. Dad, let me finish. You didn't just prove me wrong about your capabilities. You proved me wrong about what capabilities matter. I thought business success required being tough and uncompromising. You've shown that it requires being smart and adaptive. He stood to leave, then paused at my office door. For what it's worth, I'm prouder of who you've become than I ever was of anything I built myself. After he left, I sat alone in my office, looking out at the production floor, where Alina was training two new engineers, where Tom was installing our latest equipment upgrade, where former Chen manufacturing employees worked alongside people we'd recruited from across the industry. I thought about that conversation in Dad's office 2.5 years ago, when he'd offered me the choice between accepting limitation or fighting for independence. At the time, it felt like he was taking everything away from me. Now I realize he gave me the greatest gift possible. He forced me to discover what I was truly capable of achieving. The scared, dependent daughter who'd sat in that visitor's chair no longer exists. In her place is someone who learned that the most powerful revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. Phoenix Manufacturing isn't successful because we destroyed our competition. We're successful because we built something better than what existed before. And the beautiful irony is that Dad gets to be part of it. Not as the controlling owner, but as a valued team member who's finally learning what collaborative leadership looks like. 6 months ago, a journalist asked me if I ever regretted leaving Chen Manufacturing and going through all the struggle of building Phoenix from nothing. My answer surprised even me. The only thing I regret is that it took my father's rejection to give me the courage to chase my own vision instead of trying to live up to his. What about your relationship with your father now? She asked. It's better than it's ever been, because it's finally based on mutual respect instead of his authority and my compliance. And what advice would you give to other women facing similar situations with family businesses or controlling parents? I thought about that question for a long time before answering. Sometimes the people who love you most are the ones least equipped to see your potential. They get so focused on protecting you from failure that they prevent you from attempting success. When that happens, you have to love yourself enough to disappoint them. Even when it costs you everything. Especially when it costs you everything. Because everything that can be taken away wasn't really yours to begin with. That interview aired last month and has been viewed over 2 million times. The comments section is filled with women sharing their own stories about choosing independence over security, growth over comfort. Reading those comments reminds me why this journey was worth it. not just for what I gained, but for what I learned about myself. I learned that respect can't be inherited, it has to be earned through your actions and choices. I learned that the approval of people who don't believe in your potential isn't worth having. I learned that the scariest moments in life, when you're completely alone and everything depends on your own capabilities, are also the moments when you discover what you're truly made of. And I learned that the best leaders aren't the ones who demand loyalty, but the ones who inspire it through their character and vision. Today, Phoenix Manufacturing employs 180 people across 4 facilities. Our clients include some of the most innovative companies in the automotive industry. Our employees have equity stakes in the company and input on major decisions. Dad works as our Director of Strategic Partnerships, a role where his experience and connections add genuine value. Mom volunteers with our community outreach programs, helping us build relationships with local schools and technical colleges. And me, I'm no longer the disappointed daughter fighting for her father's approval. I'm the CEO of a company that proves business success and human decency aren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes people ask if I miss the security of my old life, the guaranteed inheritance, the family connections, the safety net of Dad's established business. The answer is no. Security is an illusion when it depends on someone else's permission. Real security comes from knowing you can build something valuable with your own hands and mind. When I cut the ribbon on our newest facility last month, a reporter asked what message I had for young women considering careers in manufacturing. Don't wait for someone to give you permission to be great, I said. And don't let anyone convince you that ambition is unattractive or that competence is threatening. The world needs what you have to offer, even if the people closest to you can't see it yet. After the ceremony, Dad approached me with tears in his eyes. I used to worry about what would happen to the Chen legacy after I was gone, he said. Now I realize the legacy isn't a company or a building. It's you. And you've built something I never could have imagined. Looking around at everything we'd created, not just the facilities and equipment, but the culture and relationships and opportunities, I finally understood what true success looks like. It's not about proving other people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Rate this story from 0 to 10 and tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family approval and personal growth? What did you decide, and how did it work out? *S when I started seeing the cracks in Dad's operation. Workers complained about outdated equipment that made their jobs harder than necessary. They had suggestions for improvements that never made it past the floor supervisors. The whole place ran on intimidation rather than innovation. When I went to college for business and industrial engineering, I thought I was preparing to modernize Dad's company. I studied lean manufacturing, sustainable production methods, and employee engagement strategies. I wrote my senior thesis on how family businesses could adapt to compete with larger corporations while maintaining their personal touch. Dad was proud when I graduated summa cum laude. My little genius is ready to take on the world, he announced at my graduation party. Good thing the world she's taking on is already mine. But when I returned home and started working at the factory full-time, everything changed. Dad didn't want my ideas or innovations. He wanted a younger version of himself, someone who would follow his methods exactly and never question his authority. I've been doing this for 30 years, Sarah, he'd say whenever I suggested improvements. I didn't build this company to have some fresh college graduate tell me I'm doing it wrong. I tried to be patient. I figured he just needed time to trust my judgment. So I worked twice as hard as anyone else, staying late to analyze production data, building relationships with both workers and clients, and quietly implementing small improvements that couldn't be traced back to me. The results spoke for themselves. Production efficiency increased 12% in my first year. Worker satisfaction surveys showed the highest scores in company history. 2 major clients specifically requested to work with me on their projects. But instead of pride, Dad felt threatened. He started undermining me in meetings, questioning my decisions in front of clients, and taking credit for successes while blaming me for any problems. Comment your city if you've ever had a parent who couldn't handle you being successful. The breaking point came during a family dinner when I was 28. I'd just secured our biggest contract ever with Ford, a 3-year deal worth $8 million. Instead of celebration, Dad spent the entire meal criticizing how I'd handled the negotiations. You gave them too much flexibility on delivery dates, he said, cutting his steak aggressively. And that sustainability clause you added? Pure nonsense that'll cost us money. The sustainability requirements are why we got the contract, Dad, I replied carefully. Ford is moving toward carbon neutral production. Our competitors couldn't meet their standards, but we can. Competitors? He laughed bitterly. Sarah, we don't have competitors in this market. We have mosquitoes buzzing around trying to get scraps. That's when I knew we saw the business completely differently. He viewed Chen Manufacturing as a kingdom to be defended. I saw it as a company that needed to evolve or die. My mom, Linda, sat quietly through these conversations like she always did. She'd perfected the art of being invisible during Dad's lectures. Sometimes I caught her looking at me with what might have been sympathy, but she never spoke up, never took sides. Her silence felt like betrayal, too. The tension escalated over several months. Dad started making unilateral decisions without consulting me, despite promising I'd be a full partner in the business. He hired his golf buddy's son as director of operations, a position that put him directly above me in the hierarchy despite having zero manufacturing experience. When I objected, Dad's response was swift and brutal. "This is my company, Sarah. If you don't like how I run it, you can leave." I thought he was bluffing. This was supposed to be my inheritance, my future. We were family. I was so naive. The final confrontation happened on a cold February morning. Dad called me into his office and laid out an ultimatum that would change everything. "Sit down, Sarah. We need to talk." Dad's office felt different that morning. The family photos on his desk were turned away from me, and he'd rearranged the furniture so his chair sat higher than the visitor's seat. Everything about his posture screamed dominance and control. "I've been thinking about your role here," he began, not meeting my eyes. "And I've realized we need to clarify some things about your future with the company." My stomach clenched, but I kept my voice steady. "What kind of clarification?" "Well, you're 28 now. Most women your age are thinking about getting married, having kids. This business requires someone who can dedicate their entire life to it." "Dad, I am dedicated. I work 60 hours a week. I've brought in more new clients in 2 years than—" That's exactly the problem. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were cold. "You're trying too hard to prove something instead of just following the system that works." He slid a folder across the desk. "I'm offering you a choice. You can accept the position I'm creating for you, Director of Client Relations, with a very generous salary. You'll handle the social aspects of the business, take clients to dinner, manage relationships. It's perfect for your natural abilities." I stared at the job description. Client relations, event planning. Essentially, I'd become a corporate hostess with no real authority or input on business operations. "Or," he continued, "if you insist on trying to run things your way, you can leave Chen Manufacturing and try to make it on your own. See how far your college theories get you in the real world." The room felt like it was spinning. You're cutting me out of the business. I'm offering you a perfectly good position that suits your strengths. But if you want to keep pretending you're going to run this company someday, then yes, you need to leave." I thought about all the times he'd called me his successor, all the promises about building something together, all the years I'd worked to prove myself worthy of his legacy. "What about everything you said about the Chen legacy, about this being mine someday?" His laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Sarah, be realistic. You think any of our suppliers or clients would respect a woman running this operation? This is heavy industry, not some boutique consulting firm. You're talented, but you're not built for this level of responsibility. So your solution is to sideline me into party planning. My solution is to offer you a role where you can succeed instead of setting you up to fail in a role you're not equipped for." I felt something break inside my chest. Not just disappointment, but the death of every dream I'd built around working alongside him. And if I refuse, then you refuse, but don't expect me to subsidize your independence. No more health insurance through the company. No more living in the house I pay for. No more car payments, credit cards, or financial support of any kind. You want to prove you can make it alone? Prove it. The ultimatum hit me like physical violence. He wasn't just taking away my career, he was taking away every safety net, every support system I'd ever known. "You're my daughter," I whispered. "And you're choosing to be ungrateful for everything I've given you. I won't enable that." I stared at him for a long moment, this man who'd taught me about business, who'd seemed proud of my accomplishments, who'd promised me the world if I worked hard enough to earn it. "What would you do if you were me?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair, confident in his power. "I'd take the position I'm offering and be grateful for it." "No, Dad. What would you do if your parent told you that you weren't good enough to inherit what you'd worked for your entire life? What would you do if they offered you scraps from a table you helped build?" For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, maybe recognition, maybe fear. But then his jaw set in that familiar stubborn line. I'd accept that my parent knew better than I did. I stood up slowly, leaving the job description on his desk. "Then I guess we're very different people." "Sarah, don't be stupid about this. You have no idea how hard it is out there. You've been protected your entire life. You'll be back here begging for that director position within 6 months." I paused at the door. "You know what the saddest part is? I never wanted to take the company from you. I wanted to build it with you. I wanted to make you proud. You could have made me proud by accepting your place." "My place," I turned back to face him. "My place is wherever I choose to put myself." I walked out of his office and directly to HR to submit my resignation. By 5 p.m., I'd packed my desk and turned in my keycard. By 7 p.m., I'd moved my belongings out of the house I'd grown up in. By 9 p.m., I was sitting in a cheap motel room, staring at my laptop screen and wondering what the hell I was going to do next. The last text I received from Dad that night was brutal in its simplicity. "This is your choice. Don't come crying to me when reality hits." I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling, trying to process that my father had just disowned me for refusing to accept limitations he'd decided I deserved. What would you have done in my situation? Comment below. The first week was the hardest. I'd underestimated how completely my identity was tied to being David Chen's daughter and heir apparent. Suddenly, I was just Sarah, a woman with a business degree, some factory experience, and exactly $3,247 in my checking account. I started applying for jobs immediately, but the automotive manufacturing world is smaller than you'd think. Word spread quickly that David Chen's daughter had left the family business under difficult circumstances. No one wanted to hire someone who might bring drama or divided loyalties. The responses were variations on the same theme. "You're overqualified for entry-level positions, but we need someone with more independent leadership experience for senior roles." Translation: "We know your dad trained you, but we don't trust that you can function without him." My college friends were sympathetic but clueless. Most of them worked in tech or finance and couldn't understand why I didn't just move to a different industry. They meant well, but their advice felt like suggestions from another planet. "Just pivot to consulting," my roommate from college, Jessica, suggested over coffee. "Use your manufacturing knowledge to help other companies." "With what credentials?" I asked. "My entire resume is working for my father." "Then start small, freelance, build a portfolio." She made it sound so simple. But freelancing requires networks and references and credibility, all things I realized I'd never built independently. The first person who really tested my resolve was my Uncle Mike, Dad's younger brother. He called 3 weeks after I left the company. "Sarah, honey, your dad told me what happened. This is crazy. You two just need to sit down and work this out." "Did he tell you what he offered me, Uncle Mike?" "He said he gave you a great position, and you turned it down out of pride." I explained the real situation, how I'd been demoted to essentially a secretary role, how he'd refused to consider me for real leadership despite my results. There was a long pause. Look, sweetheart, your dad's old school. He grew up in an era where things were different, but he loves you. He's just protecting you from something he thinks you can't handle. So you think he's right, that I can't handle running a manufacturing company. Another pause. I think family is more important than pride. Maybe you could try the new role for a year or two, prove yourself, and then. I hung up. Uncle Mike had chosen his side, and it wasn't mine. My mother was worse. She called constantly, crying, begging me to come home and apologize. Your father is heartbroken, Sarah. He's not eating. He's not sleeping. This is killing him. He's the one who chose this, Mom. You chose this when you decided you knew better than he does. He's given you everything, and this is how you repay him. He gave me everything with strings attached. Love shouldn't come with conditions. Grow up, Sarah. All love comes with conditions. You think marriage doesn't have conditions? Parenthood, employment, everything in life requires compromise. This wasn't compromise, Mom. This was surrender. Fine, be stubborn, but don't expect me to watch you destroy our family and pretend to support it. She stopped calling after that conversation. For the first time in my life, I was truly alone. The rejection that hurt most came from someone I'd considered my closest friend, Marcus Rodriguez, who'd been my supervisor when I first started at Chen Manufacturing. He'd mentored me, supported my ideas, and become someone I trusted completely. When I asked if he'd serve as a reference for job applications, his response shocked me. Sarah, I can't get involved in this family drama. Your dad has been good to me for 8 years. I can't risk my position by taking sides. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm asking you to honestly describe my work performance. Your work performance was great when you had your dad's backing and resources, but you've never proven yourself independently. I don't know what you're capable of on your own. That stung because Marcus had seen my ideas work. He'd watched me solve problems and improve processes, but apparently, he attributed all my success to nepotism. Marcus, you know that's not fair. What's not fair is putting me in this position. I have a family to support, Sarah. I can't afford to lose my job over loyalty to someone who might not even make it 6 months in the real world. After I hung up, I sat in my motel room and cried for the first time since leaving Dad's office. Not just from hurt, but from rage. These people who'd smiled at me, praised my work, and claimed to respect me had revealed their true feelings the moment supporting me became inconvenient. But not everyone abandoned me. The first person to truly surprise me was Alina Vasquez, a floor supervisor at Chen Manufacturing who'd worked there for 15 years. She reached out through LinkedIn a month after I left. I heard you're looking for work, her message said. Can we talk? We met at a diner near the factory. Alina was in her 50s, a single mother who'd worked her way up from entry-level assembly to supervising a team of 30 people. She was tough, direct, and had never shown me special treatment during my summers working the floor. Your father's telling everyone you couldn't handle the pressure, she said without preamble. Says you wanted everything handed to you without earning it. My heart sank. Even Alina believed Dad's version. But then she smiled grimly. That's interesting because I watched you work. I saw you stay late to learn every process. I saw you treat my people with respect when other management ignored them. And I saw your ideas work. She leaned forward. Your dad's version doesn't match what I witnessed, so I figure either I'm blind or he's lying to protect his ego. Alina became my first real ally. Through her, I learned that several other longtime employees had been frustrated with Dad's resistance to change. They'd seen younger, more agile competitors start taking market share, and they worried about the company's future. The man's brilliant at what he does, Alina explained, but he's stuck in 1995. The industry's changing, and he refuses to see it. She introduced me to Tom Williams, Chen Manufacturing's head of maintenance, who'd been lobbying for equipment upgrades for 3 years, and Rosa Martinez from Quality Control, who had ideas about process improvements that Dad had dismissed without consideration. These conversations planted the seed of an idea that would change everything. What if we didn't need Chen Manufacturing to implement these improvements? I asked during one of our clandestine coffee meetings. What if we started our own operation? The room went quiet. These were people with mortgages, families, and stable paychecks. Starting over was a massive risk. But Alina surprised me again. "I've got 20 years until retirement," she said slowly. "I always wondered what it would be like to build something from scratch instead of just maintaining someone else's vision." Tom nodded. "The equipment I've been recommending? It exists. There are suppliers who'd work with a startup if we had solid financing." Rosa was more cautious. "It's a huge risk. If we fail, we're all unemployed in an industry where everyone will know we tried to compete with our former employer." "But if we succeed," I said, feeling excitement build for the first time in months, "we prove that the old way of doing things isn't the only way." Not everyone was convinced. Maria Santos, who'd worked in accounting for Dad for 12 years, declined to even consider it. "Sarah, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but your father has contracts and relationships that took decades to build. You can't just recreate that from nothing." She wasn't wrong. Dad had deep connections with suppliers, established relationships with major automotive companies, and 30 years of reputation in the industry. But I was starting to realize that maybe those weren't the assets I needed to compete with him. Maybe I needed to build something different entirely. The conversation that crystallized my thinking came from an unexpected source: my college professor, Dr. Angela Liu, who taught my supply chain management courses. I reached out to her for advice on job searching, but she offered something more valuable. "Sarah, I've been following industry trends, and there's a gap in the market that traditional manufacturers like your father's company aren't filling." She explained that smaller automotive companies, electric vehicle startups, custom manufacturers, specialty parts suppliers, were struggling to find manufacturing partners who could handle both small batch production and rapid prototyping. The big manufacturers don't want those orders because they're not profitable enough. The small manufacturers can't deliver the quality and precision these companies need. But someone with your background, using modern equipment and lean processes, you could own that entire market segment. It was like someone had turned on a light in a dark room. "You think there's really enough demand to build a business around?" "I think there's enough demand to build a better business than what currently exists. The question is whether you have the courage to try." That night I called Alina, Tom, and Rosa. "I have an idea," I said, "but it's going to require us to bet everything on ourselves." "What would you do if you had to choose between security and the chance to build something revolutionary? Tell me in the comments." Over the next 2 weeks, we developed what would become Phoenix Manufacturing, a company designed specifically to serve the market Dad's operation ignored. We'd focus on small batch, high precision manufacturing for innovative automotive companies. We'd use the latest equipment, implement the efficiency improvements Dad had rejected, and treat our employees as partners rather than replaceable parts. The business plan was solid, the market research was encouraging. The only problem was startup capital. I had my savings, but it wasn't nearly enough to lease a facility, purchase equipment, and cover operating expenses until we became profitable. Alina, Tom, and Rosa could contribute some money, but their savings combined wouldn't cover even our first month's expenses. I needed investors, which meant I needed to prove that our team could deliver what we promised. That's when I decided to approach Dad's biggest client, the Ford contract I'd negotiated, with a proposal they couldn't refuse. Hash reveal and confrontation, 1,500 to 2,000 words. 3 months after leaving Chen Manufacturing, I was sitting across from Jennifer Walsh, Ford's Director of Supplier Relations, in her downtown Detroit office. She was the executive who'd specifically requested to work with me on their sustainability initiative. "Sarah, I have to ask, what exactly happened between you and your father's company? Your departure was sudden." I'd prepared for this question. I had philosophical differences with the company's direction. I believe the automotive industry needs to evolve faster than traditional manufacturers are willing to change. "And now you're starting your own manufacturing company to compete with Chen." "Not to compete," I corrected, "to serve markets that Chen Manufacturing isn't equipped to handle." I opened my portfolio and showed her our business plan. Phoenix Manufacturing would specialize in rapid prototyping and small batch production for electric vehicle components, exactly what Ford needed for their emerging EV lines, but couldn't get from traditional suppliers like Dad's company. Chen Manufacturing is excellent at large-scale production of standardized parts, I explained. But when you need 50 specialized components for testing, or when you want to iterate designs quickly, their operation isn't flexible enough. Jennifer leaned forward, interested. What makes you think you can deliver that flexibility? Because I've studied every inefficiency in traditional manufacturing processes, I know exactly where the bottlenecks occur and how to eliminate them. I showed her our proposed equipment list, all cutting-edge technology that could handle everything from 3D printed prototypes to precision machined final components. Our team structure eliminated the bureaucratic layers that slowed decision-making at larger companies. This is ambitious, Jennifer said, reviewing our projections, but you're asking us to trust a company that doesn't exist yet. I'm asking you to invest in a partnership that could give Ford a competitive advantage in the EV market. Every week you wait for traditional suppliers to tool up for new designs is a week your competitors might get ahead. She was quiet for several minutes studying our proposal. Finally, she looked up. If I gave you a pilot contract, something small to start, could you deliver in 6 weeks? My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. What kind of timeline are we talking about? We're developing a new battery mounting system for our F-150 Lightning. We need 3 different bracket designs manufactured and tested, 50 units of each design, delivered in 6 weeks. The current supplier quotes 12 weeks minimum. This was my moment. Say yes, and I'd have to somehow create an entire manufacturing operation in 6 weeks. Say no, and I'd probably never get another chance like this. We can deliver in 5 weeks, I said. Jennifer smiled for the first time in our meeting. Then let's talk numbers. The contract was worth $127,000, enough to fund our startup if we executed flawlessly. But I still needed a facility, equipment, and workers. I had 5 weeks to build a company from nothing. Alina quit Chen Manufacturing that afternoon. Tom gave his 2 weeks' notice. Rosa decided to stay at her current job until we proved Phoenix was viable, but agreed to consult for us evenings and weekends. Finding a facility was easier than expected. Detroit has hundreds of empty manufacturing spaces from companies that went under during the automotive industry's various crashes. We found a 10,000 square foot building in an industrial park that had been vacant for 2 years. The equipment was more challenging. New machinery cost hundreds of thousands of dollars we didn't have. But Tom had contacts in the used equipment market, and Alina knew a supplier who was upgrading their operation and selling their old machines. We spent 18-hour days that week, negotiating purchases, arranging financing, and planning our production layout. I maxed out every credit card I had and took out a personal loan against my future earnings. On day 10 of our 6-week countdown, my phone rang. It was Dad. Sarah, I heard you're trying to start some kind of manufacturing company. Hello, Dad. This is insane. You're going to destroy yourself financially, and for what? To prove some point. I'm trying to build something. You're trying to compete with me out of spite. Do you have any idea how vindictive this looks? I almost laughed. Vindictive? Dad, I'm serving markets you don't want. How is that vindictive? Because you're using everything I taught you to try to make me look bad. I'm using what I learned to create opportunities. If that makes you look bad, maybe you should ask yourself why. There was a long pause. Who's financing this ridiculous venture? That's not your concern. Sarah, listen to me very carefully. I have relationships in this industry that go back decades. If you think you can waltz in and steal my clients with some startup fantasy, you're more naive than I thought. I don't want your clients, Dad. I want clients you wouldn't take. Every client you take is a client I could have had. Now, I did laugh. That's not how business works. There's room for more than one company in this industry. Not when one of those companies is run by someone trying to prove something to her father, instead of focusing on actual business. The conversation was going nowhere, But then Dad said something that revealed his real fear. Jennifer Walsh called me yesterday, asked about your capabilities and reliability. I told her the truth, that you're talented but inexperienced with real responsibility. My blood went cold. You sabotaged my contract. I gave an honest reference when asked. Dad, that contract is the difference between Phoenix succeeding and failing. Then maybe you should have thought about that before burning bridges with the person who could vouch for your competence. I was quiet for a moment, processing the full scope of his betrayal. It wasn't enough to cut me off financially. He was actively working to ensure I failed. You know what, Dads? Thank you. Thank you. You just showed me exactly who you really are, and you gave me the motivation I needed to prove you wrong. I hung up and immediately called Jennifer Walsh. Jennifer, this is Sarah Chen. I wanted to address something directly. I suspect my father may have contacted you about our contract. He did call, she admitted. He expressed some concerns about your ability to deliver without his company's infrastructure. And what did you tell him? I told him that Ford makes supplier decisions based on capability and performance, not family politics. Your proposal stands on its own merits. Relief flooded through me. Thank you for that. Sarah, can I speak frankly? Please. I've worked with your father for 5 years. He's competent, but he's also resistant to innovation and dismissive of ideas that didn't originate with him. The sustainability improvements you implemented during our last project, those came from you, not him. I know because I worked with both of you directly. She paused. Your father may have more experience, but you have something he lacks: adaptability. In this industry, that's becoming more valuable than experience. That conversation gave me the confidence to push forward despite Dad's interference. But it also made me realize I needed to prepare for him to escalate his sabotage efforts. The next test came from an unexpected source: my cousin David Jr., Dad's nephew who worked in sales at Chen Manufacturing. He reached out wanting to meet for drinks. "Cuz, this whole situation is crazy," he said, ordering his third beer. "Uncle David is furious, but honestly, some of us at the company think you got a raw deal." I was cautious. David Jr. had always been friendly, but he also owed his job to Dad. "I appreciate that, but I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm focused on building Phoenix." That's actually what I wanted to talk about. I've been thinking, what if there was a way for you to get inside information about Chen's operations? You know, client lists, supplier contracts, pricing structures. I stared at him. "You're suggesting I steal proprietary information from Dad's company?" "I'm suggesting we help each other. You need advantages, and I need opportunities. Uncle David's never going to promote me past sales associate. But if Phoenix succeeds, maybe there'd be a place for someone with my connections." The offer was tempting. Access to Chen Manufacturing's client database would give Phoenix enormous advantages. I could undercut Dad's pricing, target his most vulnerable accounts, and accelerate our growth by years. But it would also confirm every terrible thing Dad believed about my character. "David, I appreciate the offer, but I can't do that." "Why not?" He cut you off without a second thought. "Why do you owe him loyalty?" "I don't owe him loyalty. I owe myself integrity." David Jr. looked disappointed but not surprised. "Your loss, cuz. Don't say I didn't try to help." After he left, I wondered if I was being stupid. Everyone in business cut corners when they had to. Maybe my moral standards were a luxury I couldn't afford. But then I thought about Alina, who'd quit a stable job to bet on me. About Tom, who was using his life savings to help fund our equipment purchases. About Jennifer Walsh, who was trusting us with a contract that could make or break Phoenix. I wasn't just building a company. I was building proof that you could succeed without compromising your values. The real validation came from an unexpected source, James Morrison, who ran a small automotive startup focused on electric delivery trucks. He'd heard about Phoenix through industry contacts and wanted to meet. "I've been looking for a manufacturing partner for 2 years," he explained over lunch. "The big suppliers don't want our business because our volumes are too small. The small suppliers can't meet our quality standards. Everyone tells me I need to work with established companies like Chen Manufacturing. And what does Chen Manufacturing tell you? They tell me to come back when I need 10,000 units instead of 100. Your father was polite but basically dismissed us as too small to bother with. I pulled out our capability portfolio. What if I told you Phoenix could deliver 100 units of precision manufactured components with full quality certification in 4 weeks? James's eyes widened. I'd ask what you want in return. A partnership. You help us prove our capabilities with smaller clients, and we give you the production flexibility you need to compete with larger companies. By the end of lunch, James had agreed to become Phoenix's second client. More importantly, he put us in contact with 6 other small automotive companies that needed exactly what we offered. Rate this story so far from 0 to 10, and tell me if you think Sarah's making the right choices. The week before our Ford delivery deadline, I was working late in our new facility when I heard a car pull up outside. Through the window, I saw Dad's Mercedes. He walked into our facility and stopped, looking around at the equipment we'd installed, the workstations Alina and Tom had organized, and the first batch of Ford components in various stages of completion. "So this is it," he said quietly. "This is what you chose instead of your family." "No, Dad, this is what I built when my family chose conditions over love." He picked up one of our prototype brackets, examining the precision and finish. "The quality is good," he admitted reluctantly. "It's better than good. It's exactly what the client requested, delivered on schedule at competitive pricing." "One contract doesn't make you successful, Sarah." "You're right, but 12 contracts might, and we have 12 contracts." His head snapped up. 12. Small batch, specialty work that Chen Manufacturing doesn't want. Turns out there's an entire market segment you've been ignoring. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. What kind of contracts? I could have gloated, could have made him feel as small as he'd made me feel. Instead, I just felt tired. The kind where clients need partners instead of suppliers, where innovation matters more than tradition, where people are valued for their ideas, not their willingness to follow orders without question. Dad was quiet for a long moment, still holding our sample component. "I trained you too well," he finally said. "You trained me exactly as well as you should have. You just never planned for me to use that training independently." He set down the bracket and looked directly at me. "I was protecting you, Sarah. This industry will eat you alive if you're not strong enough. Maybe you were protecting yourself from finding out I might be stronger than you thought." And that's my story. I went from being the daughter of a man who thought I'd never survive without him, to becoming the CEO of a company that proved him wrong, proved myself right, and built something stronger than either of us ever imagined. But here's the thing, this story isn't just about me. It's about anyone who's ever been underestimated, anyone who's ever been told they're not built for this, or that they should just accept their place. So I want to hear from you. Rate this story from 0 to 10. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose between family approval and personal growth? Did you take the safe path, or did you bet on yourself? Because sometimes the biggest legacy you can build is your own.